Hi everyone, I'm Professor Tech, and this week we're definitely not turning coat and arguing against something that we just put out last week. No, not at all. In fact, we're standing our metaphorical ground and talking about all the reasons why the Asus ROG Ally absolutely crushes the Valve Steam Deck OLED. So let's see how this goes. So in last week's video, I took a stance and declared that the Valve Steam Deck OLED is by a wide margin the best portable handheld PC on the market. And while a lot of viewers agreed, there were a lot, and I mean a lot of viewers that disagreed. And to some points, rightfully so, many brought up Steam Deck's lack of VRR, a less powerful APU, and just an overall lack of performance when comparing the Ally to the Steam Deck. And while I make these videos because I really love all of these devices, I do want to be clear that I want to foster a positive community that has both fun banter and disagreement, but doesn't resort to insults that hit below the belt. But sometimes it's in the spirit of good fun, critical thinking, and the pursuit of fairness that sides need to be taken. And so with that said,
the ROG Ally is the absolute best there ever was. You think Bill Gates was better? Steve Jobs? Oprah? Gandhi? That puppet from Nautilon? No. Asus ROG Ally stomps the floor and absolutely wipes the competition away like a trip to the facilities after a burrito night. Total domination of the PC handheld market is only the beginning. First here, next Canada, then the island of Fiji, and then the whole universe.
So yeah, we're talking about power and performance this week. Continuing the spirit of fun and lighthearted competition, we'll be taking a look at 5 unique aspects of the Asus ROG Ally that puts it not only ahead of the Steam Deck, but several of its other Windows handheld brethren. And if you're someone who stumbled onto this video and actually find yourself preferring Valve's Steam Deck, make sure to get subscribed, because here at Professor Tech, we confirm everybody's biases. Except you, Jack. You're wrong. And that's why she left you. So with that out of the way, let's dive into 5 reasons the Asus ROG Ally crushes Valve's Steam Deck OLED. Alternate game launchers. Yes, one of the most compelling features of buying a portable handheld PC isn't running a custom OS like SteamOS, Onion, or others. It's the fact that it's capable of running any launcher that can be installed to a traditional Windows machine. Epic Games? Got it. Blizzard? Sure. Rockstar? Most definitely. Steam? Obviously. Ubisoft? You're still using Ubisoft's launcher. That's fine. It'll work. Any and every launcher will work on Windows. Standing in stark contrast to Valve's efforts with Proton, the Asus ROG Ally runs on a fully functioning desktop level release of Windows, which gives it the ability to work with virtually any game. What's more is that there are no shifty workarounds that get games that aren't on Steam to work. I distinctly remember really wanting to play Far Cry 5 and spending so much time when I got my Steam Deck trying to figure out how to install the Ubisoft launcher using weird plugins before finding out that you have to add the launcher to Steam as a game and then launch it using a Proton layer and then finagling your way through the menu system to launch Ubisoft each time. It was just an absolute mess. It worked, but only after a lot of finicking with the system. Here, that's no issue, as you can just install Ubisoft as you normally would. See that joke earlier? I'm the guy that's still using the Ubisoft launcher. What's more, even lesser known launchers and websites that sell non-DRM titles like GOG are accessible too. So those games that you bought in college that you forgot about but occasionally get an inkling of nostalgia to play, only to realize 10 minutes in that most games don't age the best when you're looking at them through rose-colored glasses. They won't be as much of a hassle to install, play for 10 minutes, and then immediately uninstall or forget all about, just like before. Again, I'm that guy. But that's the power of Windows. Everybody designs for it, so you have full access here to all of its powerful ecosystems. And speaking of power, the APU. One of the shining features of the ROG Ally in comparison to most other handhelds on the market is the fact that it packs the current heavy hitter of APUs when compared to things like the AYN Odin and the Valve Steam Deck. Heck, even the Lenovo Legion Go, which has the same AMD Z1 Extreme processor, only matches the ROG up to this front. Speaking of the Lenovo Legion Go, make sure to like the video down below, because once my channel hits 5,000 subscribers, I'll be adding the Lenovo Legion Go to my review catalog. In terms of raw performance, performance, the AMD Z1 Extreme crushes Valve's 7nm and 6nm APUs in the Steam Deck and Steam Deck OLED, respectively. While the Steam Deck does manage to outpace the ROG Ally at the lower power draws of less than 15 watts, especially at the sub 10 watt power draw, it's the higher power profiles that leave the Steam Deck completely in the dust. However, once you hit the 15 watt and above power range, the ROG Ally starts to slowly but vigorously stomp the Steam Deck and other portable handheld PCs. Linus Tech Tips as well as Gamers Nexus dove a little bit more into this, but the TLDR version is that 15 watts, the ROG Ally beats out the Steam Deck in almost every title, and at the performance mode of 25 watts, it demolishes the Steam Deck not only in terms of frame rate, up to potentially 120 Hz, but also resolution since the screen offers up to 1080p. More on that in a bit. And as an added bonus, if you're plugged into a charger that can push 45 watts or more, the Ally offers a 30 watt power mode that just destroys everything else on the market at the moment. And the 25 watt and 30 watt power draws, you'll be plugged in anyway because the battery life does take a major hit here because, well, physics, but you'll be plugged in. Pound for pound though, the ROG Ally really does crush the Steam Deck OLED and the OG models here. Most people will probably be running games at 720p at either 15 or 20 watts, and those power profiles with that resolution, you should see anywhere from a 30 to 50% increase in performance if you're willing to take the frame rate hit, and you can crank it up to 1080p and get mostly equivalent frame rate performance compared to the Steam Deck at 720p. Something that isn't equivalent between these two though is the control layout. All right, before my haters come at me because I literally said I prefer the Steam Deck OLED's controller layout to the ROG Ally's last week, which you can see up here, I have something to confess. That was an entirely personal preference. I recognize that most people that are PC gamers have traditionally used controllers with offset analog sticks like that of the Xbox family of controllers, the Nintendo Switch Pro controllers, or any number of additional third-party controllers that leverage that. Heck, Satisfy even makes an entire grip for the Nintendo Switch just so it feels more like an Xbox controller on the go with more ergonomic grips. And so while I do honestly prefer the Steam Deck's layout because of my preference for PlayStation controllers, this much is clear. For the vast majority of gamers out there, the Asus ROG Ally's controller layout will be far more familiar, practical, and much more performative by proxy. Additionally, as I also mentioned in my previous video, I much prefer the ROG Ally's directional pad to that of the Steam Deck OG, as well as the OLED's D-pad for fighting and retro gaming. And while the Steam Deck's D-pad isn't bad, it's just passable, while the ROG Ally's is pretty good. Not perfect, but fairly well done. I also have to give it some major points to the shoulder and trigger buttons on the Ally. The shoulder buttons have a nice clickiness to them that's responsive across the length of the button and especially in the corners, something that the Steam Deck OG had issues with, and the travel from press to response is quick and clicky. The trigger buttons, meanwhile, have a nice softness to their press that feel more akin to an Xbox controller, while the Steam Decks again feel more like a DualShock controller. While the Steam Deck OLED improved quite a bit over the OG model for the shoulder and trigger buttons, I'd argue that the Ally still has the better feeling responsiveness overall. And something else that feels really responsive is the screen. Ah yes, the screen. A defining triumph that the ROG Ally has over the Steam Deck OG and gives it a solid run for its money on the Steam Deck OLED. While yes, the Steam Deck OLED does have the more vibrant, more color accurate display that runs at 90 Hz, the ROG Ally does manage to dominate the Steam Deck in a lot of ways here. Firstly, the refresh rate. The original Valve Steam Deck ran at a max of 60 Hz, which very few games could reach outside of indie titles and lower demanding and older AAA titles. Even with Valve's recent refresh of the Steam Deck OLED, which features a 90 Hz refresh rate and an improved cooling system, allowing for greater overall performance, the top out is still only 90 Hz, and realistically, those same games from before will most likely be able to hit the limit for the screen in terms of maxing it out very rarely. The Ally, on the other hand, has several titles that can easily reach 90 Hz due to the previously mentioned APU power, including more AAA titles than the Steam Deck OLED. And to top that off, it can go all the way up to 120 Hz with several titles, although this is still limited to mostly indie games. Some more demanding games, with the added wattage of 25 or 30 watts, can reach relatively high frame rates, superseding anything that the Steam Deck could possibly reach within its physical limits. Secondly, let's talk about that resolution. For a long time, I was an avid believer that 720p at this screen size was more than enough. We've seen YouTubers and scientists alike talk about resolution, screen size, and the distance from our eyes enough to know that even at a certain point, resolution becomes less and less important, and the smaller and smaller a screen gets, the less important it is. For the longest time, I used a Google Pixel that had a 1080p screen that I thought looked just as good as the latest iPhone or Samsung Galaxy. And to be completely fair, I wasn't wrong. For watching video content and doing daily tasks that are mostly still just as good in most ways, but for gaming, there was a noticeable difference. I played COD Mobile a ton, and on my Pixel, I had a great time. But then I had some mechanical issues with my phone, I was on a work trip, and I hadn't bought a flagship phone in many years. So, as a personal splurge, I purchased a Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, a phone with a much higher resolution than 1080p, and I immediately noticed the difference when gaming. Not only in refresh rate, but clarity and things like particle effects, and getting my aim to be more spot on due to the higher fidelity and pixel count and movement. And so, it's within this last year that I've come to realize that for gaming, even at a screen of this size, 1080p is the sweet spot. I still love the Steam Deck OLED screen, and the added clarity that OLED gives us is nothing to sneeze about. It's fantastic, but when it comes to fast-paced shooting games like Call of Duty, Halo Infinite, or even fast and quick platformers, these extra pixels on the Ally that give extra definition gives players a tactical advantage in-game, and it generally also looks a bit nicer. I suppose in a golden space, I would love to have a 1080p OLED screen at about 120 Hz, but for now, the Asus ROG Ally has the better screen for fast-paced gamers. And you know what else the ROG Ally is better at? The flexibility. Perhaps one of the biggest reasons anybody chooses to buy an Asus ROG Ally or a Lenovo Legion Go for that matter is the added benefit of having Windows installed on your handheld device. This is similar to a point I made earlier, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about things that expand beyond just gaming launchers. The sheer amount of software options at a player's disposal are infinitely higher than that of a Steam Deck family of consoles. And while I have clearly talked about the pitfalls of Windows as a portable OS in previous videos, it clearly holds the advantage in terms of compatibility across platforms. Want to play games from Epic, Rockstar, Steam, Blizzard, GOG, emulators? Want to install productivity apps for work on the go? Want to use any of your desktop compatible peripherals? Want to have a small form factor console to install and a home DIY arcade setup? The possibilities are quite unlimited and are only limited by the power of the APU and whatever Windows can handle. The Asus ROG Ally crushes the Steam Deck OG and OLED in this respect, and it really isn't anything else that can be said about it. Yes, I could argue all day about how many of those aforementioned flexibilities can be worked around using janky installation methods, forcing game launchers to run via Proton layers, and then using the touch interface to actually make them work. I could talk about all the command line style workarounds that exist for games. I could talk about the custom launchers that allow games like Minecraft, albeit only the Java version, to run. But even those have to be constantly updated and have some crashing issues because they're not really meant to work with it. But when it comes to anything outside of the Steam ecosystem and the EMU deck system, which admittedly does run a bit better on the deck in my opinion, the ROG Ally continues to be a force to be reckoned with for gaming. And with the added benefit of being able to do other things other than game in a relatively easy fashion that doesn't require searching for custom apps or Linux specific software, it also adds more to the table than just gaming. In terms of handheld PC gaming, we are living in one of the most exciting times. We are constantly getting new and robust updates that feel like true generational leaps and bounds, like the days of the Game Boy, PSP, and the DS. So while I said in my last video that I prefer the Steam Deck OLED and that it is still true, I do still keep my ROG Ally around because it is truly better in so many ways. And in many ways, it absolutely crushes the Steam Deck. So I hope you liked that video. If you did, make sure to hit like, get subscribed, and all that jazz. If you don't, a giant koi fish will fall from the sky and sit on you like I sit on this chair, large and immovable. I love you all, and I can't wait to see you all next week. Happy 2024! Woo! We just crossed 3,000 and I'm so stoked. Thank you so much. See you next week.